Welcome to Dream and Do, a podcast for women who are chasing their dreams, rediscovering who they are, and are ready to make changes, big or small. I'm your host, Nicola Ray Wickham. Join me for confidence pep talks, soulful insights, and practical tips on all things creativity and wellness, along with powerful conversations with women who are dreaming and doing in action. This is the stuff you're going to wish you knew years ago, but don't worry, it's not too late. Let's get started. Hey loves, and welcome to another episode of the Dream and Do podcast. I'm back at the mic for this one with my friend Natalie from Power Thoughts, and I'm going to go into that in a minute, but I just wanted to let you know a little bit about what's been going on in my world. So, baby is here. Obs, I'm sure I've recorded since then. She is now coming up to 5 months old, and yeah, we're getting into the swing of things now. Being a mama of two is definitely a learning curve, but it is lovely and it is challenging and it is lovely, all rolled into one. On the business front, things have been good. Denise Duffield-Thomas, she is of the Lucky Bitch Money Bootcamp that I've been a part of for a few years now. She's got 3 babies, and whenever she has one of her babies, she uses the mantra, babies bring abundance. And so in getting pregnant with number 2, I was looking around for kind of other women in the space who were also new mums and mums of young babies and how they were making it work. And I came across her mantra and I adopted it. And it was pretty good, actually. Babies do bring abundance in so many different ways. And yeah, not to be really cheesy and hashtag blessed, but I have been able to balance business and baby and life, and it's been all right. I need to do an episode on that, actually, because lots of people have been saying to me, "Oh, like, you make it look easy," and I'm like, well, you know, you ain't seen my house. Anyways, I digress. So on the business front, I'm fully booked at the moment for one-to-one clients from September through until kind of November time. So if you're wanting to work with me one-to-one, I might have one space coming up. So message me and let's see what we can book in. What I will be doing is a new coaching experience. And it's all going to be about you showing up wholeheartedly. It's about you finding your voice, and it's about you creating content that converts and connects. Well, connects and converts. And I'm really excited about that. So obviously you guys will know once it's ready. And what else? Wellness is wealth. We've got our supper club coming up. This is if you're listening to it when it drops. We've got our supper club coming up. And the power cards are here, which are affirmations for kids. And that is why I wanted to speak to the lovely Natalie from Power Thoughts, because we have collabed on the power cards. And we really wanted to get them out for the back to school period, because we know that it can be a time full of anxiety for both kids and parents to be able to navigate through it. And the cards are perfect for this. I've used them myself, so I can vouch for it. So this episode is where Natalie is giving us tips, tricks and exercises to help children, primary school children, kind of under the age of 10, to transition into the new school year. So whether it's you're listening to this as they're starting school, or whether it's just coming back from a holiday, even coming back from half term or Christmas or Easter, it can be met with the same kind of challenges. So Natalie gives us tips that we can use in the back to school period, but also just in general. It's a really good episode. I really hope you enjoy it. The power cards, by the way, if you need to get yours, then head over to www.thepowercards.com. Right, my loves, enjoy the episode. Let us know if you've got any questions at all. We are recording another one that is for teenagers specifically. This one is for the younger children. And other than that, I'll see you on the gram, sending you all the love. So Natalie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Nicola.
It's so lovely to have you here. I have been meaning to have you on the podcast forever. And then I took a mini hiatus to have a baby.
And just that small thing that I popped out, which wasn't so small. And now it feels like a really lovely opportunity now that we're collabing on the power cards. And we're diving into the back to school period. So it feels really nice opportunity to have you on to talk all about going back to school and how we can support the young people in our lives with doing that. So in this episode, we are going to focus on the younger children, like primary school age, and find out all the top tips and tricks. But before we do that, tell us more about you.
Yeah, so thank you, Nicola. And I'm excited to be here. I'm so excited for our cards because I think they've got a lot of magic that they're going to be sprinkled out there in the big wide world. So me, power thoughts. So I used to be a primary school teacher for over 12 years, and I felt that there was a gap in the market. I found because I was also really into personal development, and I trained to be a coach because I was actually wanting to leave teaching. And through the transition period that I went through in exploring how I can start to use coaching, I realized that there was a gap in terms of helping our children learn about their mindset, because we, at school, we teach children how to problem solve, critical thinking, but we don't actually teach them about their thoughts or what is a thought and how it's linked to our feelings, and that we don't have to believe every thought that we think or every story that we tell ourselves. And I think that to me really struck a chord because I grew up feeling quite anxious, always had what I called it my worry. I mean, I had a very happy childhood, but I was definitely more prone to worry about things. And I think had I been given the tools and just the understanding that I don't have to believe the worry that's in my head, that I could do certain things about it, would have made a massive difference in terms of how I felt and how I approach things. So, yeah, Power Thoughts is a blend of my teaching experience, my coaching, and I've also got a background in psychology because I trained I have a degree in psychology, and the initial plan was to complete my master's in educational psychology back in South Africa, but then I ended up staying in London, so that never happened. So yeah, Power Thoughts now is a program that helps children to, not to believe every thought they think or respond to everything that they feel, but ultimately giving them the tools to help them manage their mindset so that they are feeling more resilient and really, being more resourceful as well, not just simply responding to things that take place, but actually having some tools to help them shift perspective and deal with those challenges in a better way. So that's about me.
That resonates so deeply. I feel like if we had met when we were younger, we totally would have been friends. And we were very similar in terms of I was a worrier as well, massively. And I love what you say, because at the beginning of the podcast, actually, in my intro, I say, this is the stuff that you wish you knew years ago, or you wish you were taught in school, but you weren't. And I feel like a lot of us that are on this kind of journey, it is the stuff that we wish that we'd been taught in school. And I just love that you're doing that for the next generation coming up. So
yeah, thank you. No, and I think that's the thing as well. If I had these tools earlier on, and it's not, I think sometimes I get criticized and think, but shouldn't you just let children kind of carry on with it? And it's definitely not about taking away from childhood experiences, but it's rather about giving them tools to help deal with these experiences in a more positive way, or in a way that's going to be serving them better, versus at the age of 37 trying to unlearn certain tools and certain negative mindsets and certain ways of thinking, which I'm still doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I hear you. And so it's such an important time in childhood when those stories get set, isn't it? So with these tools, you're able to start rewriting the stories then, or as they're happening, it's just different. So
absolutely. Definitely. It's like I always like to say, it's about creating positive habits or helpful habits.
Helpful habits.
Yeah, because that is what it is. It is about putting these things into practice.
Yeah, and also if anybody has that kind of, you mentioned kind of criticize you for taking away from that childhood experience, but now childhood is very different to when we were children, and they have different challenges to deal with. And even like with the internet and social media and just the way things are, they need these tools to help them navigate these extra layers that their experience is going to have, that our experience certainly didn't have, and our parents like really didn't have. So
definitely. And I think also, just touching on that, I also think we are recognizing now how important mental well-being is, and mind health, looking after our mind. So not just our body, but actually what's going on in our brain, and looking after like brain hygiene. And I think, you know, many years ago, in the days of like grandparents, we were just kind of taught to kind of, well, suck it up and get on with it, which is all, you know, there's an element of, we've got to build the grit and the resilience, absolutely. But we're realizing now how important some of those hidden feelings can be, or, you know, hidden scenarios can be, and how important it is to vocalize that and to provide opportunities where people are supported. And again, giving some tools and habits to help with some of those difficult feelings that, you know, we might have kind of suppressed when we were in a different era, but then really struggling with that.
Exactly. Ooh, so let's dive in. We have had some questions. This is going to be a mixture of questions that we've had from our audience on Instagram, and some questions that I have added in as well. So this is all about back to school, because lots of kids are going back to school in the next few weeks, and it kind of applies after the summer holidays, obviously, because there's been such a long break. So there's been that build up. But also I noticed with my daughter, who is now 6 years old, after any holiday, even after a half term of just a week, there is still that kind of anxiety brewing about having, because in their little lives, isn't it, a week is a very, very long time. So 6 weeks feels like forever. So one of the questions that we've had through is, we've got a lady who would love to hear how she can help her daughter deal with not feeling like she has any good friends. And that's causing some kind of general anxiety for her. Her daughter is 10.
Yeah. So 10, so she's on the cusp of obviously going to secondary school. I'm assuming probably year 6 or year 5. I'm getting my maths wrong now. But friendships is a difficult thing, I think, especially in schools. I mean, as adults, it's difficult already, but you've got the choice. You don't have to hang out with that person. Whereas at schools, you're kind of, from experience and working with children, you're stuck in a class with some people that you might not want to be stuck in a class with. But so friendships is always a bit of a difficult one. But one thing I always say is, and I mean, I don't know too much about difficult friendships or how tricky it is or what's happening, but there's always two things. So I always tell children, be the kind of friend that you want to have, because sometimes it's very, and I'm not saying this is the case of her daughter, but sometimes it's very much, well, this person didn't do this person didn't do this, but actually let's shine the mirror on me as well. What kind of friend do I want to have? But that's the type of friend that I need to become and step into those shoes. And that might mean not saying mean things about other people, or and I'm not implying that her daughter's doing this at all, but it's just taking a check back on, okay, well, what's my behavior to this? And I mean, we can't do anything about other. I always, brings back to that exercise, I think, of that circle of control of what is in my control and what's not in my control. So it's not in my control what other people say to me. It's not in my control how other people feel about me. But what is in my control is who I choose to spend time with, how I choose to behave towards others, but also what I choose to let in. So whilst, I'm not going to touch on bullying, because I think that's a completely different topic that needs a lot of, specialized intervention. But often, and I put myself in this, I'd be really sensitive and I take on what somebody says if somebody's mean to me, and beginning to kind of build a sort of like an outer, stronger shell, and actually decide, well, that's not going to work, so I'm not going to let it in. So I do activities with children where we role play, and I actually get them to draw themselves in a bubble where they've got all inside of all of the positive qualities that they like about themselves, how they make their friends feel. And then on the outside, we've written the mantra, I choose not to let it in. I choose not to let it in. And we actually play some games where, we role play and we say some like unhelpful things, but obviously I'm not mean to them or anything like that. But we're like, oh, you've got a big fat toe, I turn this into a game. But they'll be like, well, that's not going to work because I'm not going to let that in. And this particularly reminds me of a little 5-year-old girl that I worked with, and we really built on this. I mean, Mum, said to me a couple of weeks later, she's like, she's coming home and she's like saying, she's able to use her special mantra or her magic words to let others know that she's standing up for herself. So I think, friendships are really difficult. And the other thing is what is in schools around that age of about 10, as well, especially within girls, we want to find our tribe. We want to find our pack. We want to belong. So from experience, I can sometimes see some really like catty behavior that comes up around that time. And it's a really, really difficult time. But I think if you can choose to pay attention to what is in your control and also choose to pay attention to be with people who do make you feel valued and good. And it might not be the most popular kid. It might be the quiet child at the back of the class, but she's a really good friend, but I've never given her the opportunity because, there's a lot of noise from the popular ones. And then also I worked with a girl who was about 10 who also struggled with friendships. And whilst you can't do anything in school and with school friendships, what about other external activities that children can do in order to meet different groups of people? And building their confidence when it comes to friendships and what good friends are, so they don't just have that one frame of reference when it comes to their classmates or friends that they've been stuck with for 6 years in some schools. Do you know what I mean?
That is so powerful. And even as you were just talking about the bubble and but it's the start of boundaries, isn't it? Which is a conversation I know that I have all day long with my clients of like 30, 40, 50 years old. That's the starting of boundaries where you're able to say, this is what I'm available for in a sense, and this is what I'm not. This is what I'm choosing to let in. And to give that gift to a 5-year-old, 10-year-old, of being able to know that they don't have to allow everything in that is said to them. That is like would have blown my mind as a 10-year-old to know that.
Well, me too. You don't, just because somebody says they don't like you doesn't mean you have to let it in. I mean, it hurts, but actually, if we can unpick and think, well, do I respect this person? Do I value this person's opinion? Do I love this person? It's that whole thing of don't take criticism from somebody that you don't value. I can't remember the quote, but there is that quote because I've read it quite a bit. But that it's just okay. Well, and the other thing as well. And I can absolutely relate to this because I really struggled as a child. I needed to be liked by everybody. And even now I still catch myself always say I'm a recovering people pleaser. But I said, do you like kiwi ice cream? No, yuck. Do you like strawberry ice cream? Yes. Do you like bubblegum? No, whatever. But that's the same with people. We're just different flavors of ice cream to an extent, if you know what I mean. So it's okay to not like everybody, or it's okay for not everybody to like you. It's and kind of just kind of depersonalize, like just creating that little bit of space helps to kind of see, okay, actually it's just their preference. But obviously dynamics are different if people, if children start to be mean and there's bullying and then that sort of thing, that's obviously when it gets a bit more serious. And
Brilliant. Okay, thank you for that. And then there's another one which was around, this is about starting school. And this mum was worried that that she'd heard from her friends where their children were going the whole day without using the toilet because they were too scared to put their hand up to ask to go. And you know what? Like my daughter was a bit like that when she first started school in reception a couple of years ago, where in preschool or nursery, they didn't have to kind of ask, or it was a different setting. they go, but it feels suddenly they have to put their hand up in front of the whole class, and there was all the nerves around that. So is there any advice in supporting?
Oh gosh, that is a bit of a difficult one. And just in terms of the children, because I know I used to be a year one teacher, and like you could see the look on some children's faces. You're like, do you need to go? I mean, in terms of, just advice for parents, which I'm sure, and maybe you don't, I don't know, they might not feel like they want to talk to the teacher, but I would honestly just come and, putting my teacher's hat on, say, come and tell me, just, make me aware if your child is perhaps, especially in the beginning of the year where the teacher is not perhaps familiar with all of the children and the personalities and things like that. There is a lot, there is a lot that might go amiss initially in terms of little things like that. And I know that certainly happened to me when I was a teacher in the beginning of the year. And I mean, a poor little girl, unfortunately, it was a little bit too late. So I think, having parents speak to teachers first, and be like, okay, just make them mindful of that. But then also I think with children, I think, there it is about building that muscle of confidence. And I think that is okay. Like it kind of taps into boundaries, I guess, a little bit, because it's kind of like, this is something that it sounds really silly, but like, this is something that I need to go and do. Like, I'd have to look after myself in order to go. And if children are a little bit apprehensive about putting their hand up, actually send them on a scavenger hunt to see how many times other children put their hands up and what happens, and nothing happens. If you're thinking you're creating sort of like a big, but people are going to laugh at me, so let's have a look who's asked to go to the toilet, because guaranteed there will be some children that are asked, but nobody does anything. They get up and they go. Or, in that sense, instead of making it into a big worry of people are going to laugh at me or think I can't go to the toilet by myself, or
Yeah, brilliant. You know what? This is sounding more and more like metaphors for the work that I do with women. It's amazing, isn't it? It's that whole, but if I be visible, if I put myself out there, or if I go and do that thing, something bad will happen. And it's just the same, like, well, nothing bad has happened to anybody else that's done it. And it's fine. It's that what if.
Yeah.
And actually,
exactly.
I love that you're giving them the evidence by that scavenger hunt to show them that actually nothing bad happens if you.
Nothing bad has happened. No, that's right. Exactly.
Love it. Okay. And then there's another lady who said her friend's little girl is crying a lot during the day and waking at night. And that's with the transition into starting school.
Oh.
And she's at the stage where she can't really verbalize everything that she's feeling.
Yeah, that's difficult. I mean, I don't know how old the little girl is, but obviously we don't like change. We're creatures of habit, so we like things to stay the same. And I think that sense of worry can sometimes feel really, it can feel really big, especially in a little person. But one activity that I do with children, and I'm sure, the parents have already maybe done this in terms of obviously familiarizing themselves with where the new school is going to be and all of those sort of things, but actually doing a bit of a vision board with the child or creative brainstorming where we can get excited about the new things that we will be learning when we go to the new class, whether it is year 1 or year 2. And getting excited about the changes that are going to take place versus scared. The new trips we're going to go on, the new work we're going to learn. When I do this with children, they get really excited about fish fingers on a Friday. Maybe there's special privileges that they now have because they're that little bit older. If she's going from reception to year 1, that's a big step. That's that's wow, we're going to be brave, we're going to be courageous. And also turning it into a game. I mean, I love games because kids, that's what they like. But, picking your favorite superhero or action models. I recently worked with a little girl who was 5.5 and she moved schools quite late in the term, but she was obsessed. I know the cliche, but she was absolutely obsessed with Elsa from Frozen. And You know, we would create a story where, like, what would Elsa say if she's going to the new school? How would Elsa behave? What would Elsa be doing? And she would then play the game of being Elsa when she goes to her new class. So I think shifting it from that fear to the excitement instead, and what are we, and having that vision board up there, or the visual reminder up so they can see it, is one of the things definitely, that they can look at doing.
Brilliant. I love that. And you did that with Mia the other week, didn't you? Because Natalie and I were having one of our online meetings, and I had Mia in the background, and she was telling Natalie that she was nervous about going from year 1 to year 2. Actually, I think she used the word terrified, which I was like, oh gosh, she's never used the word terrified before, but she just started terrified. And Natalie did such a good job of transitioning. Like, I've spoken to Mia about fear and excitement being a very similar feeling, and that we can exchange fear for excitement, but obviously it hadn't landed until the exercises that you gave her, you actually got her really excited about the fish and chips on a Friday, the school chips that she would be going to, and all of those kind of things. So it's such a lovely way of reframing. And just getting out of that worry space into, I'm actually a little bit excited about this. These are fun things I could be doing. And it changes the energy state, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. And you use words in there like the language of courageous and brave.
Yeah.
So important, isn't it? Because it's not like we're going to whip them out of school and have them never experience those feelings of worry or anticipation, which then is transitioned into excitement. But then being brave and courageous is such kind of powerful.
Yeah, definitely. And just in that, the lady that one, I mean, there's a book recommendation. It's called The Lion Inside, and I cannot remember the name of the author, but it's about a little mouse who is too afraid to stand up. He wants to be like the lion. He wants to be courageous like the lion, and he talks to his journey of how he's really scared, but then he does these things and he works through the scary feeling to become, to approach the lion, to ask the lion for help. But it's a really good story for, I think, if children are afraid, to teach them bravery. So it's called The Lion Inside. If you Google it, it will come up.
Brilliant. And I'll put it in the show notes. No, that's good. And you know what? I love that where you've mentioned about stories, because from an NLP perspective, stories are so powerful, because within a story we wrap in metaphors, and our unconscious mind will link to that story. And so, because so much of our behaviour is dictated what's going on kind of unconsciously, our unconscious mind hears that story and absorbs it, and then it kind of plays out in our conscious mind. So stories, like, they work a treat for adults, but they really, really work well for children. Yeah. So something that I sometimes do with Mia, if she's going through something that she's worried about, and I've got the energy not to read a story, but to think of one from my head. It was easier to do it when she was a little bit younger as well, when I could make the story super simple, but I was able to wrap kind of whatever she was worried about and the theme of it within that story. But like those book recommendations, that kind of thing, to really support that is brilliant. Cool. And I think that a lot of this is around how parents can support their children, and how we can support the young people in our lives, but how they can then support themselves to support the children.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I know that the back to school time is, a lot of the focus is on the kids. It's kind of like, they're worried about going up a year, or they're worried about starting. But in turn, there are so many parents that then have those worries for their children. And I just wondered if you would be able to speak to like what parents can start to do to kind of support themselves to support their kids.
Yeah, I think first, I mean, this sounds really cliche, but I think be gentle with yourself and with, the expectations. Sometimes I think on social media it can seem like it's everybody's first day is beautifully perfect, and it's all these like back to school photos, and granted, I mean they're gorgeous, they're cute, and it's a proud moment. It's one to be remembered, but it's okay if you want to have a bit more of a softer approach to it and allow yourself to feel sad and perhaps a bit of a loss. I remember, and I can only speak from my experience as a teacher and a year one teacher, so quite new. The children that would come to me would, the reception unit was at a different location, so it was like it sounded like we were all starting all over again. But I think what it's about being gentle with yourself and allowing yourself that it's okay if you're feeling all of the feels as well. And I also think it's okay if your child sees that you're feeling a little bit sad about it. I mean, obviously I'd say I'm not going to do a full-on meltdown in front of them. That might be really difficult for the teacher and the child, but it's because I think one of the things that we're obviously trying to do, especially with our cards, is to help everybody realize that all feelings are okay. And I think it's allow for that space of change and transition where things are going to feel wobbly, perhaps be a little bit softer in terms of expectations. I'd also say sometimes there is this need to kind of get back in full swing, and everybody's doing this club and that club and this cute, and it can be really quite it's quite easy to get caught up in the whirlwind of what everybody else is doing. So, and it's okay maybe if you don't want to book your child on an after school club for the first 6 weeks, that's fine too. But yeah, I'd say just, be gentle and appreciate that it's going to feel wobbly, and it might feel wobbly initially. And I also think, depending on schools, but I think the schools that I worked in, they were quite open door policy very much, especially in the beginning. And, and I think that kind of eased the tension a little bit as well. Yeah. I don't know, you've obviously been through first days.
Yeah.
But,
I feel like, the first day when I dropped Mia off at reception, I kind of held it together, and then I dropped her off, and as I was walking away from the school gates, I just burst into tears. And there were these other parents kind of coming my way, and they were like, "Are you okay?" And I'm, "Yes, I'm fine. I'm okay." And I think it was just the whole wanting her to be okay and things. But I think what you've said is really good about knowing that you can talk to the teachers and keeping that communication open is really important. And then what I love about affirmations is that you can use them, and I've definitely used them. It's part of the reason that I wanted to create them with you, is because they're such a great tool. So what we would do in the mornings is pick an affirmation card, use that as a talking point. And it's great tool because it allows the child then so for instance, the one I've got in front of me is "I am calm." So it allows them to talk about what it means to them. Maybe they want to, I would get Mia to repeat it, but then I'd also talk to her about what it means to me and how I might be using it in my day, or times when I don't feel calm, so this will really help me. Or depending on your child in the scenario, you might want to share that actually they might say, "But I'm feeling really nervous, Mummy, about starting," or "Daddy, I'm starting." And it's like, well, you know what? I feel a bit nervous too.
Yeah.
But that's okay. And so it's a point where you can both kind of come together and both share your experiences and have a conversation. And the kids aren't stupid.
No, they know.
They know. They pick up on our energy and they can feel it. And where we can just be honest with them, obviously, not breaking down completely in front of them, like you said, but where we can be honest with them and show them, I think that helps to show that the feelings are normal as well, when you're like, "I feel that way."
Yeah. And I think as well, sorry, carry on.
So, and I know that Mia loves it when she's feeling something, and either myself or her dad are able to tell her when we felt like that when we were kids. She's constantly saying, "Well, did you ever feel like that when you were a kid, Mummy?" And if I tell her that I feel that now, it kind of makes her day.
Well,
because I think it's that validation of actually.
Well, because when I work with children, obviously, it's this thing of, they would say to me, I feel as if I'm the only person that feels this, whatever the feeling is, whether it is, so jealousy, for example, comparison is a big thing. That person's smarter than me, I'm behind, everybody else is more clever than me, that kind of thing. But actually, when I get to say, well, put up your hand, who of you have ever had these thoughts? Because I write them down, and like the whole class goes up, and some children would actually go like, oh, like the big surprise face, because they see that, Susan over there, who's super confident and super popular, feels the same things. And I think like it's that validation of the feelings, that it's not just me, that I'm okay. It kind of goes back to that I am enoughness. Do you know what I mean? And then as well, I think, just touching on what you said about the cards, I think it also opens up an opportunity to talk about things that we wouldn't normally talk about. Like a different type of conversation with your child that you might not normally have, which I think is quite a nice little exercise to do. Yeah,
definitely. And I love how this is mirroring the experience of my clients. I keep saying it, but kind of like it's mirroring the experience of women who get to a certain age who are feeling those things, like the amount of people who feel like they're the only person in the world who feels that way. And we get comfort when we know that actually we're not the only ones. And so for a child to have that, and I keep calling them a gift because that's what they are, it's that gift of knowing they aren't the only ones.
Yeah.
And then to navigate their life from there on in knowing that.
Yeah, it takes the power away from that feeling, doesn't it?
Right, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So I had, this is kind of probably a bit of a personal question. But it was just around how, if you feel like you've got a child who potentially could get lost in the middle. And what I mean by that is that they aren't kind of the naughtiest child in the class.
Okay.
But they're also not the A-star student maybe in the class. How can you support them to still be seen and heard within
Yeah, and I totally get that, because I think the reality of a lot of this, schools is that there's one teacher to 30 pupils. And it is easy to, I think, I can see what you mean there in terms of getting lost. One of the things that I would say is, and I know that you do this with Mia, but is to consistently build on. And it sounds really cheesy. I don't know how to word this. That is really cheesy. But build on what are the good characters about me? What are my strengths? What do I bring to the table? But also challenge her out of her comfort zone a little bit. So looking at the so I'm using her as an example here.
No, it's fine. Yeah.
The zones of comfort. So. Not so much in terms of getting validation from other people, because we know that that's not where happiness lies, but it's in terms of her stretching herself to not be comfortable in being comfortable. So looking at activities where you could stretch her confidence that little bit. You've got your comfort zone, your courage zone, and then your panic zone. And I think, it might not, looking at how can you help stretch her into the more courage, I wouldn't say panic zone, but it's into the courage zone a little bit more often, whether it is, and maybe she does this at school. So an example I'm thinking of is, right, maybe I'm normally a very quiet child, but can I today put my hand up once and ask a question, or ask Miss to repeat something if I don't want to ask the question?
Yeah.
Or it could be, let's try a new activity, but looking at ways to challenge them, to kind of help them explore and identify other skills or other strengths that they might have that they don't know about yet, but also builds that muscle of confidence again, that muscle of courage, that thing of, oh, well, I'm doing this. So you kind of automatically, you build that sense of self-confidence, don't you? And like I said, the key of this is not to get the validation from everybody else on the outside, but it's for them internally as well. this is how, this is who I am, and this is how I'm growing, this is how I'm getting stronger, and I'm trying out new things that feel really scary.
Yeah, and an example that comes to mind for that is that me as a fairly confident child, especially in certain scenarios, but something I was very conscious about when she was a little bit younger is that if we were out and about and she had a question, say we were at a restaurant, it's like, no, you ask the lady, or you tell her what, like, you've decided what you want from the menu, you ask, or can you go, we were at something the other day and she had a question about the food, and I was like, they work there, go and ask them. She's like, what, me? And I'm like, yeah. And she walked over, tapped them on the shoulder and asked the question. And I know that a year ago that would have been like, oh, mummy, can't you just, and now she's able to just go over there. So that was her moving into her kind of courage zone, stretching it out. That now kind of feels comfortable, and it's like, well, what's next?
Absolutely. And I think, like, if you can carry on doing that in different things, and even different scenarios, like after school clubs, going to try new types of activities that they might never have tried before, builds that sense of self, because that's what we want. Ultimately, regardless of where we are in the academic classroom, you want to build their sense of self and their sense of self-happiness and their sense of self-acceptance.
Brilliant. Okay, so is there any other tips that you have before we wrap up?
I would say, well, in terms of back to school, I think I think be mindful. Some of the feelings might feel really big and wobbly. An exercise that I do with children is obviously kind of deep belly breaths as well, to kind of calm the nervous system. Perhaps also have like a bit of I know bedtimes can sometimes feel a bit difficult, so having some of the the calming mantras that we've got on our cards could be some that you could use at night, maybe along, and make it like quite special. Like maybe we could have a bubble bath, and then we could I was about to say light a candle, but that might be a bit dangerous for children. Maybe have some nice music on in the background.
That sounds like my ideal bedtime though, Natalie.
Yeah. But I'm thinking maybe having a nice little bedtime routine for them that they look forward to kind of keep them calm. And I think as well, setting them up for looking for positive intentions the next day, in terms of either whether it is using the prompts from the cards of looking for the positive things in the day, and especially if they are feeling wobbly, like I said, what are you excited about? Brainstorm, visualize, do the vision board about the things that are exciting that are going to be coming up, and also, this is quite useful if they're a little bit older. So maybe if they're year 1 going to year 2, or maybe even reception to year 1. But what advice would you give to somebody? So if they're reception going to year 1, what advice would you now give to somebody who's going to reception? Or what advice, like in Mia's case, I think she's going to year 3, isn't she?
Year 2.
Year 2. So what advice would she give to a year 1 child? And maybe get them to write a letter or draw a picture. But that is then the advice that they use for themselves. I think that's quite a powerful way of kind of what would you tell somebody else to do.
Yeah. Oh, I love that one, because it's also positioning them in that they realise how far they've come. Isn't it? And they know what they know. They kind of, sometimes we all need to do that, kind of write down what we know to know that we know it. And maybe that's what I'll do tonight for myself. But that is such a beautiful exercise for a child to do, for it to be illuminated to them how much they know in
a top tip that they could write down, because I'm all about visual, if they can see the stuff to remind them. Because I think, I remember reading something, or child's attention span is their age plus a few minutes, so they're going to forget. But if it's there, I don't think you need to. I don't know, mine stopped at about 5, so I don't know. But, I think if it's visual of my top tip to go to year 1, my top tip to go to year 2, just have that there. Is a reminder,
Oh, that's lovely. Okay, well, thank you so much. I know that was jam-packed full of tips and the exercises. I can't wait to listen to this back and scribble them all down and start doing them. Because I think that is that key thing about we all want to kind of do our best by them. And often I know the people listening to this, we're in this world of self-discovery, which is a huge blessing, but sometimes can feel like a burden because we know. We know what we're doing. We know the potential that we have to help or hinder. And that can sometimes feel like a burden. So just knowing what to do and wanting to do the right things in order to support our young people and young children can be challenging. And this is just, we wanted to do this to help support you, to support them.
Absolutely.
To let you know that you're more than likely doing an amazing job because your intention is there, and there are just some ways that you can support them in an extra way.
That's right. Yeah, and I mean, just, in closing, because the one thing I say to parents is being a parent is literally the hardest job. I know that there are many, many challenging roles out there, but you don't go to parent university or parent college or parent school, and every child that comes into this world is not delivered with a manual. So you have to figure it out, and you're learning as you go as well. And I think, I'll often have, parents would say to me, but I feel I should know this. And I'm like, no, you shouldn't. Like, you're learning just as much. It's okay to not know it. And I think, and like I said, what would work for one child would not work at all for another child. So you're learning. And I think, like you said, it's just additional tools to put in your toolkit to use.
Yeah, exactly. So the power cards. They're now out.
They are. By the time this is out, they're out.
By this time, they're out. You can buy them from the website. The links will be all in the show notes. And, well, you guys know that I love me an affirmation. They're my love language. I've been creating them for women for a number of years now. And so many of you have asked me about affirmation cards for kids. And I knew that I wanted to do it right. And so my friendship with Natalie, we've been friends for a few years, and it literally came to me in a dream, actually. I was like, just create them with Natalie. So that's what we've done. And it's about sharing the power and the magic of affirmations with children. And these cards are more than just a pack of cards, because you can use them to help create a routine with your kids. Like we talked about in this episode, you can use them as conversation starters, as well as using them as that kind of real mindset tool of the repetition of the affirmations in themselves. So we're really excited to bring them to the world.
Absolutely. I can't wait. I can't wait. And I think they're going to help so many children, but also grown-ups too. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, guaranteed. Like when I'm doing them with Mia and using them, they're going into your mind as well, because that's the way that it works. So
yeah. Brilliant. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, my love. It has been so good to talk to you.